Chapter 3. The sisters sat alone in the dark, shuttered living room, crammed together in a huge rocking chair. After bathing Franken, Kit hadn't wanted to go to Boney Creek, and neither had Fancy, who felt much too raw. "Classes, Fancy," said Kit, rocking them violently. "Our whole summer ruined over 2 classes that we don't even need." Fancy elbowed her sister in the ribs. "Hush." It would take a lot to wake Mata, who was asleep in the back room, but Kit had a lot. "Don't tell me hush." "Did you put our allowances in the treasure chest?" "The hell with money. Why am I the only one freaking out?" A few bars of slanted light came through the shutters and glanced off the fish tank across the room, where a 2-foot silver dragonfish cut through the water. It belonged to Mata, who'd named it Merlin, and liked to watch it chase down and eat the live fish she fed it. Fancy understood that side of Mata, that small, morbid streak. But she didn't understand Mata's desire to separate her and Kit. Fancy closed her eyes. "It's not real to me. I can't think about it." "You better think about it. Mata's serious. She—" Fancy's eyes flew open. "Shh. Listen." The rocking stopped, and the sisters' ears pricked at the sound they'd been waiting for, the telltale squeak of the mailbox opening. They waited until they heard the mail truck roar to life and then fade in the distance before they burst out onto the front porch and into the summer heat. Fancy quickly weeded out the bills and junk mail, placing them back into the rusty black box beneath the porch light. What was left over was the only thing that could have distracted the sisters from Mata's summer-killing news. A bunch of handwritten envelopes with no return addresses. They hurried into their room with the letters, and after Kit got the sun tea from the porch steps, they sat at the pink, flower-shaped tea table that overlooked the garden. Kit played an old record on the phonograph, which crackled and popped as some woman sang about another woman named Dinah Lee. As Fancy added ice and sugar to the tea, Kit began to read. "What I love about Guthrie Cordell is that not only is he one of the few black serial killers, he's one of the best ever. I am glad that black people are finally representing because the world needs to know that black people can be just as crazy, if not crazier, than white people." The sisters looked at each other and giggled into their teacups. "That's what the world needs to know?" said Fancy. "And she misspelled representing. What a bozo. Oh, wait. This one has an address from Canada. My uncle shot my aunt in the face. I'm sending you a piece from the shirt she was wearing that day. If you could send me something from one of Guthrie's victims, that would be awesome. Best wishes, Albert. P.S. It doesn't have to be bloody." "How cool is that?" Kit studied the enclosed square of yellow fabric and sniffed the rusty brown splotches staining it. "Foreign fan mail, Fancy. And he wasn't mean or crazy or anything." "Sane people don't send bloody clothes through the mail." Fancy tore off the Canadian postage stamp and placed it in the keepsake box on their desk filled with other such stamps from Algeria and Israel and Nepal. Daddy's crime spree had made news all over the world. "Would we have sent something to him?" Kit asked as Fancy came back to the table. "Nope." Fancy opened another letter. "Probably he's just looking for something to sell, like Franken was." "Maybe Albert's lonely," said Kit, almost stubbornly. "Maybe he wants to be friends." "You think people want to be friends with us? Listen. Your father is the devil himself, and you girls are the devil's spawn. He should have killed you instead of innocent, God-fearing Christians." Fancy showed Kit the letter, the angry dark slashes gouged into the notebook paper. "This is what people think of us, and Mata wants us to think they matter. What's wrong?" Kit was toying with a gold switchblade again, hitting it against the table. "You think Daddy did want to kill us?" "Trying to understand Daddy is like trying to nail jelly to a tree." Fancy turned away and swapped Dinah Lee for Cole Porter's Anything Goes. She hated when Kit started obsessing over Daddy's possible motives. You could talk and wonder for hours and never get anywhere. Daddy was a mystery. "He couldn't have wanted to," Kit said, almost to herself. "It would have been easy as pie. Deep down he must have known that we're just like him, and that's why he let us live." "He let Mata live. She's not like us." "She's not like us, and she doesn't like us. Otherwise she wouldn't be trying to split us up." Fancy grabbed Kit's fidgeting hands, forced them to be still. "Don't talk like that, Kit." Even if Mata does like us, she doesn't like the real us. If she knew what we were really like, she'd turn on us like she turned on Daddy. Fancy felt the tension ease from Kit's hands. At least I have you and Franken. Fancy dropped Kit's hands as if they had suddenly become radioactive. Franken? I can be myself around him, too. Kit gave her a surprised look. What's not to love about that? You don't love him, said Fancy sharply. You love cutting on him. Don't confuse it. Kit put her switchblade away and poured herself more tea. Well, I ain't confused about one thing. Nothing'll ever split you and me up. Not classes, not Mata, not boys. Not death, Fancy added, relieved to hear Kit speaking sensibly. Kit raised her pink cup to Fancy in salute. Not even death. Not even Franken's death. Fancy groaned. Don't start that again. You said yourself we can't keep Franken forever, Kit insisted. Sooner or later, we're going to have to get rid of him. Fancy sipped her tea thoughtfully, fascinated by the way Kit could speak of loving and killing someone in the same breath, but not fascinated enough to let her do anything stupid. We've got all these medical books, right? Maybe we can study up on how to cut out the part of Franken's brain that remembers stuff. He won't remember he was here, and we won't go to jail. A lobotomy? Kit gave Fancy a surprised and admiring look. Why can't you think of awesome stuff like that all the time? Bring me some more hostages, said Fancy, and I'll make a list of fun things to do to 'em. Oh, boy! Kit jumped to her feet. I'm kidding. Kit dropped back onto her stool and opened another letter. Spoil sport. A few days later, Fancy finally convinced Kit to go to Boney Creek with her. The sisters parked their bikes near the slow-moving snake of water, which ran deep in the woods about a quarter of a mile from their house. The thick cover of leaves filtered the harsh afternoon sun, and so the light that made it to the forest floor was cool and green and harmless. The sisters, in their swim clothes, weaved in and out of the trees. They seemed to have sprouted from the forest floor, with their reddish-brown skin the color of autumn leaves, as doe-eyed as the deer that occasionally wandered into their kitchen garden to snack. See anything? Asked Fancy over the trickle of water and birdsong. Sure. Kit slapped a mosquito against her neck. Poison ivy and deer crap and rocks, oh my! A scream of laughter shrilled from the forest, one ungodly yipping laugh, and then a chorus. Fancy stopped dead, her skin rough with goosebumps, her peaceful slumbering forest now awake and heavy with malice. She whispered, Cacklers? This far up square? Kit didn't say anything, but as the laughter crescendoed, her frown grew darker. Fancy had once overheard Big Mama speak of a man she'd lived next door to when she was a child, back in the 50s, a neighbor who had caught a cackler and kept it chained in his front yard like a pet for weeks. It had scared Big Mama to death to have to walk by it on her way to school. She'd said the worst part was how human it had looked, a slimy white mannequin with a pumpkin-sized head and pink eyes. It never barked or laughed, or made any sound like cacklers normally do. But every time Big Mama passed her neighbor's yard, the cackler followed her with its eyes, and seemed to grin at her with a white, needle-toothed mouth that split its face ear to ear. But one day on her way to school, Big Mama noticed that the cackler was gone. Instead, her neighbor was chained in the yard by his throat, and the lower half of his body was simply gone. Eaten. Fancy pulled on her sister's arm. Let's go back. Screw that! Kit shook her off. I ain't letting some trespassing cackler run me out of my own woods. She turned slowly, as if she wanted the cacklers to get a good look at what they were laughing at. It's 2 o'clock in the afternoon, creeps! She shrieked, startling not only Fancy but the entire forest. Does that sound like dinner time? You think you can come into our woods and make a meal out of us? These are our woods. You hear me? These are our woods! Silence. Kit waited, scanning the dappled trees, animals still, waiting for any excuse to strike. Fancy imagined the cacklers gathering their young and slinking away into a safer stretch of forest. Fancy couldn't help but smile at her sister. Kit was such a badass. When the silence continued unabated, Kit relaxed and said, There's one. Fancy grabbed Kit. A cackler? No, stupid girl, a fairy ring.